Good morning. Good morning. Why is it so dark? Good morning. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Here we are. It's about a little bit before 6 a.m. here in southwestern Nevada. This is Department of Career Services. My name is Edward Bevilacqua. We are here to help our students and other interested people on their journey through this life of where we are souls with a body, not bodies with a soul. We're souls with a body. And our purpose here in this podcast is to help people through that journey, in their journey through life, preparing for what comes next in a 4-part transformational program where we focus on the physical, which is fitness and health, mental, always be learning, C, emotional, and number 4, spiritual. 4 legs to a table, 4 solid legs, fitness and health. You got to keep the body in good shape so your spirit can experience the most possible things. Mental, always be learning, always be learning. C, not C, number 3, I'm thinking of ABC, always be cobbling, always be closing. But emotional, if you can't control your emotions, don't worry, someone else will, and they'll probably take you out of the game. You got to control your emotions. It's one of the hardest things everybody has to do. Always let somebody else control our emotions. This goes back to Marcus Aurelius and his meditations. Anyway, and 4th is spiritual, what it's all about. And this is our book for non-Christians being released into the jails. Non-Christians. Okay, good morning, Diana. Good morning. How are things in Portland? How are things in your world out there? Felony Flats, right? Okay, so I've got an interesting show. This is day 2 of week 2. In our neuroscience-oriented approach to success, we're learning about neurotransmitters today. In the bigger scheme of things, week 2 is called Inside My Skull-Size Kingdom. We have evolved, conditioned, programmed to see the world revolving around us. Everything revolves around us. Things happen to us. Things happen with us. And so that's my little skull-sized kingdom that I control. So we are investigating that. How does the brain work? What's going on inside of your skull-sized kingdom? How does that relate to answering the 2 big questions? Who am I and why do I behave the way I do? So yesterday we learned about the neurons, as Yuval Harari calls them. We would say neurons. My mushroom coffee infused with coconut oil. Good cracker. So yesterday we learned about neurons. Today we're learning about neurotransmitters. So remember, the neuron is a type of cell in the brain where we have about 86, according to Susanna Herculano, about 86 billion neurons that have about 10,000 connections each, touching other neurons. So that's 86 billion times 10,000. So 86 billion times 1,000 would be 86 trillion connections, but it's 10,000. So 860 trillion connections going on in our brain. Except as Dr. Eamon says, it's easy to damage the brain. So you could have damage to a lot of those 86 billion neurons and 860 trillion connections. However, so yesterday we learned about neurons, how they work, how they connect, and that long strings of them enable us to do things like talk or do this. Magic. I can just imagine my hand going up and it goes up. I don't have to do anything. All right, so Yesterday we learned about neurons. Today we're going to learn about neurotransmitters, because the way neurons work, they don't actually touch. There's a little gap called a synapse between each neuron. And if the electrical charge is going this way, this neuron will spit out a neurotransmitter and be received through vesicles, little holes in this neurotransmitter, and that will charge it, and it will go down to into the brain and connecting to other neurons. So down this dendrite, maybe go to this other dendrite, and that's basically how it works. So what is the function of neurotransmitters? Good morning, Watnadabevi. Neurotransmitters. I don't know how many different ones there are, but in the Simon Sinek video below that's in red letter, we're going to learn that 4 neurotransmitters are responsible for send and receive, right? Neurochemicals. We're going to learn about 4 neurotransmitters that Simon Sinek says account for about 90% of what makes us happy. So we got to get that our emotions are chemically created. Again, in a psychology approach to success, you just focus on beliefs, feelings, behavior, outcome, etc. In a neuroscience approach, we're going down deeper. Where are memories stored? Where are our feelings created? And they are created by neurotransmitters, the release of neurotransmitters. And the neurotransmitters are related based upon beliefs that we have and things happening to us, either outside of us or inside of us. So we're going to focus on 4 neurotransmitters that Simon Sinek calls EDSO. EDSO. And the first 2, the ED, he calls the selfish ones, because you don't need anyone else to release them. Endorphins and dopamine. They are designed to make us feel good. So endorphins, as Simon Sinek says, mask physical pain. When you're running, after a while, you get a runner's high. That's the release of endorphins, because you're breaking down your muscles. And we have evolved to release this neurotransmitter so that we keep exerting ourselves. Like if we have to chase down the food, we'll just keep going because it actually feels good, because we have released these neurotransmitters. Laughing would be another example that Simon Sinek uses, where when you're laughing, you're actually contracting your muscles, and endorphin is released to make it feel good. But everybody's experienced the thing of stop, it hurts. You're laughing so hard that it hurts. Why? Because you've run out of endorphins, or the amount of pain exceeds the release of endorphins. So number 1, EDSO, E, endorphins, mask physical pain. Go to the gym. That's why people go to the gym and work out. It feels good. Why does it feel good? Release of endorphins. Next, dopamine. Simon Sinek calls the do it hormone. No, he doesn't call it that. He calls it the, what does Simon Sinek call dopamine? He calls it the sex, drugs, and rock and roll hormone, or neurotransmitter. It's the one that makes us get things done. It's the one, but he says, caution. Dopamine is highly, highly, highly addictive. So we'll do something, a behavior, and release dopamine. That release of dopamine will make us want to repeat the behavior. So that's like slot machines, and then it gets into addiction type things, where the addictive part is it becomes unconscious. You do it, you don't even know you're doing it. Hey, how'd that cigarette get in my hand? Type of thing. And it's hard to stop. It's hard to change non-conscious behavior because you're not conscious that you're doing it. And often non-conscious behavior is the result of repetition. You don't need to consciously think about doing it. So dopamine is the second one. Endorphins, mass physical pain, dopamine. He had some other thing for it too, where we want to get stuff done, your to-do list. Write things down on the to-do list, do it, or you do it, then you write it on the to-do list, you check it off, and you get a little shot of dopamine. Or your pager goes bing, or not your pager, your cell phone goes bing, phone rings, whatever it is, and that will release dopamine. So when you really get into it, which we're not going to do, is dopamine released on the anticipation, or does dopamine make you want to do things? And it gets to be kind of tricky and it's different, but basically you can associate repetitive behavior with dopamine. Okay, those are the ones you don't need in any other people. Now that's the ED, the SO, serotonin and oxytocin. Simon Sinek says the serotonin is the status. It's the one that makes us feel good. It's why we wear designer clothes, why we have tattoos and stuff like that, because it makes us feel good. Also, he talks about when we graduate from college. He says, what does it take to graduate from college? You take certain classes and you pay the tuition and you graduate. And he said they could send you a PDF, congratulations, here's your diploma, PS, summa cum laude. You could print it out and it wouldn't feel the same as it does when you have the ceremony, the graduation ceremony, where you get to walk across the aisle, get your diploma, shake hands, you see your parents out in the crowd, and they say, we're so proud of you. And you get this feeling of happiness and joy. Or when people win the Oscars or they win a sporting event and they want to praise people or thank them. I want to thank God. I want to thank my mother, etc. That is serotonin. And then the last one, oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, or as he says, the rainbows, the unicorns, all of that we get when we hug people or people hug us, little kids, when we hug babies, people now with pets, these old dogs, oxytocin. Okay, next that we're going to learn about on Thursday is when you can combine these neurotransmitters to be called a cocktail. And then we're going to learn on Thursday about the angel's cocktail, which is like endorphins and dopamine, or endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin, etc. Combination of these neurotransmitters that become very powerful when combined. Or the devil's cocktail, that would be some of these other ones like cortisol and, say, adrenaline, where we don't do things or we don't do good things. So 4 neurotransmitters, according to Simon Sinek, responsible for about 90% of our happiness, and all happiness is chemically induced. That's why people take drugs to release, massive amounts of dopamine or oxytocin, depending upon the drug. So 4 neurotransmitters responsible for happiness. They can be combined. Now, there's another interesting thing, that when some of them work, other ones don't really work. So, for example, dopamine and oxytocin don't really go together, or sometimes they don't. Think about AA. What is it that causes you to want to drink? Dopamine, okay, the do-it fluid, the do-it hormone. Okay, dopamine gets you to want to drink. You might see something about alcohol, smell, hear, taste, touch, whatever. Somehow alcohol comes into your system, or halt, hunger, anger, loneliness, tired. You get that way, and non-consciously it's, oh, I need a drink. Okay, so AA tells you, oh, if you feel the need to drink, in other words, you're getting massive doses of dopamine, saying, feed me, Seymour, wanting you to drink. AA says to do what? What does AA tell you to do? What, not a bevy? or Diana tells you to do one of two things. Call your sponsor, go to a meeting, or go to a meeting. Do one of those two things. Why? Because when you call your sponsor or you go to a meeting, you are going to release what? What are you going to release? What, not a bevy? You are going to release oxytocin. Right. And as you're turning up the oxytocin, the dopamine is going down. So your urge to drink goes down as the oxytocin floods through your system. And I guess one way you could think about it is if your neurotransmitters are spitting out oxytocin, they're not spitting out dopamine, or at least not as much. Or maybe oxytocin's more powerful. Don't know. But what AA discovered, not knowing about neurotransmitters, what they discovered 100 years ago was if you go to a meeting, not 100 years, close to 100 years ago, if you go to a meeting or you call your sponsor, your compulsion to drink diminishes. And now that we have the technology, we know that as you are with your sponsor, talking to your sponsor, going to a meeting, on your way to a meeting, you're releasing oxytocin and the dopamine is going down. Bingo, bango, bongo. So for our purposes, the takeaway for us is if we understand how these neurotransmitters work, we can go to our thing of what is the outcome I want? What's the behavior I need to get that outcome? What do I need to feel to get the behavior I want? And what is the belief? What is it that will trigger the release of the neurotransmitter to get me to feel the way I need to feel, to get me to behave the way I need to feel so I get the outcome I want? Really pretty basic. It's just like plumbing, just like engineering, just like being an electrician. You got to do one step at a time. And here in our program, we get to the point by the end of the 4 weeks, it should be, okay, what's the outcome I want? What's the behavior I need? What do I need to feel in order to get the behavior I need? So if there's a building burning down and a woman comes running out screaming, saying, my child is in there, go save my child, go save my child. Well, what is it you need to go in and save the child? You need dopamine, for sure. Maybe endorphins would be helpful, right? Mask physical pain because it's going to be hot and smoky. Mask and your eyes are going to burn, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to need endorphins. Maybe you're going to need oxytocin. What if it was my child? I can imagine it's my child. I have to go save this child. And or serotonin of, hey, I can be a hero. If you put those 4 things together into a cocktail, you're in that building. You're saving the child. On the other hand, if your belief is, oh no, I could get injured, half of my face could get melted off, my kids will think of me as a monster, you're now going to be releasing what? Cortisol, which we didn't talk about. You're going to be releasing cortisol, and you could release so much cortisol that you are frozen with fear. And the lady's screaming at you, save my child is dying. And you hear the child screaming upstairs, help me, and you can't move. Why? Cortisol, adrenaline, can't move. So we want to get to the point of what's the behavior I want? Okay, in order to run into a burning building, I need dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and I need everything I can get because I need to be fast. I need to be accurate. Time needs to slow down. When I'm running through that building, I need to be aware of a lot of stuff going on that I'm not consciously able to process. And I'm in and out because I'm going to be the hero. It could have been my child, etc. I've been trained to do things like this. Okay. So with that, we're going to call it an end. And thank you for being there, Diana. Glad to hear the weather is nice up there. What not a bevy. Good talking to you last night. And tomorrow we are going to learn about the reticular activating system. So with that, I'm going to say Auf Wiedersehen, hasta la vista, baby, and cut. Oops. And where are you, Miss Trinkle?